Well, Hegel is a good guy that we could look at, he says, because Hegel showed us that everything is just in process, man. It's just in an evolutionary process. Process philosophy, how many times have I told you that it's the guiding philosophy of these guys? Because it's just another version of this kind of evolutionary nonsense where nothing is fixed, everything is evolving. And he says, yeah, and ultimately we're going to get the machinification of everything. And that will lead to the rise of the bots, the rise of machines, and then we'll have stricter population control. But we can't say this to everybody because they're not going to accept it. So this was written in 1946, okay? So that's part of the reason why he says, when I tell you the eugenics, dysgenics stuff, most people aren't going to be able to accept this. However, you further smart people, elites that are reading this, you're going to understand that most nations will not accept this. But we got to kill pretty much everybody. But don't worry, because we are going to, over generations, he says, propagandize people to accept it. And here we are with giant parades and celebrations for killing offspring. This is literally what he said would happen. He said, we will use all of our media, mass communications, arms, arts, toxic culture, promote the filth, and then we'll get our desired result. And here we are. It's all here. They all write books about it. Nobody can figure out what's going on. The world's crazy. What's going on? I don't know what's happening. They all write fucking books about it, telling you what's happening. Makes me mad. Start getting mad when I think about it. And the people that come up, argue all day with me about this stuff, when there's 50 fucking books about it that are all public. It makes me mad. I get tingles. I get mad. And you want to argue with me about it. World government must come to be in order to enforce these plans. Could it be any clearer for you? Can I make this clearer for you? Page 13. A world government must come to be to enforce all of these plans. Namely, killing everybody. Why? Because divisions are bad, man. Break down the borders, break down the walls, and build Babel. Quite literally, build Babel. The World Health Organization will be central in this. And we'll end war. Yeah, right. Yeah, we'll end war. Okay. How are you going to end war? By killing everybody. I'm not joking. I mean, that's literally his mindset, because these people are Luciferian. They're satanic. They literally think that everyone will die and should die, except for the top 1 to 2%. It's not down to 500 million. It's very few people, actually, is the real thing. And he says, how do we know this? Because we're all made of stars, man, and we're evolving to godhood. Literal 2001 philosophy is what he says. He says we are all made of stars. Crowley, Aleister Crowley stuff. We are all made of stars. Moby stuff. What does all this mean? Evolution has taken us to a point where we need to get down to an optimal population. He doesn't tell you what the optimal population number is, though, because it's very small. He says, now this is an interesting section where he says some of the stuff you hear me say, which is about the issues of the one and the many. And he says that both a radical collectivism and a radical individualism are wrong. He says there needs to be a balance between the one and the many. Oh, okay, yeah. Do we do that through God? No, of course not, because we don't know anything about God. There's some kind of vague, general New Age oneness, but there's not any God that you can know about. Rather, what we have is scientism. Literally, he's a complete proponent of scientism. This shows, by the way, that all the scientism proponents are really just phony frontmen for an actual Luciferian cult at the top. They're not believers in actual scientism. He says they believe in transhumanism. It's literally a religion, a Gnostic Luciferian religion. And he says that your personhood does not come to you on the basis of being created in the image of God. He says that your rights as being a person, he says we should look to Hegel here and the idea of the philosophy of right and the radical statism of Hegel. He says actually Hegel is actually right, that your personhood comes to you on the basis of your usefulness to the collective. So babies aren't persons because they're not useful to the collective, you see. And what is this ultimately? He says this whole philosophy is the unification of all opposites. What? Well, that's alchemy. Yeah, because he's into the occult. And he says that. He says when we're going to construct a unified tradition of all the religions, he says it's basically perennialism. My brother wrote a book on it. Can you figure that out? And if we can figure out a way to give everybody mammons, they'll go right into this system. A universal basic income, a credit system. Yeah, because Bertrand Russell, his butt buddy, said that before he did. Because they're in the same crew who planned the world. Then he says, yeah, I talked a lot about equality, but we know everybody's not equal. We're going to have this bullshit facade of liberty, equality, fraternity, but we know not everybody's equal. He says, but not everybody can handle that. So what we're going to do is have a secret plan. He says this. He says it's going to be keep it kind of on the DL that not everybody can handle this idea of the mass depopulation and dysgenics. Oh, page 21 is all about dysgenics and central planning. He says, so what we got to do instead is spend the next several decades re-educating people for this radical eugenic plan. And then we'll institute central planning, and everybody will tell you what your job is. Central planning, on the basis of your genetics, is going to tell you what your gifts and your job is. You're not going to do what you want to do. You're not going to grow up and become a fireman or whatever, because most of you will not go into the future. That's what this plan is. 95%, 98%, 99% in this view are not going to go into the future. You're not going to inherit the earth, in their view. Now, he makes this interesting statement. He doesn't come out and say this, but I think that's what he means. He says, civilization has the effect of causing a bunch of degeneracy. Now, he's talking about weaponized culture and civilization. He says, we know that when we do this, it brings a lot of degeneracy. And he says, so what we're going to do is civilize the whole world. This is the mission of UNESCO, to civilize the whole world. It's to take toxic culture to the whole world. Now, it has this facade of we're going to preserve the big fat Buddha statue over here under the World Heritage Site. And we're going to preserve this thing over here for the World Heritage. That's not for you. That's the World Heritage of the top 1% to inherit while you die. That's what it means. That's what he says it means. It's basically saying this elite group is going to have all of these great treasures. It's for them, not you. That's what that means. When you see UNESCO World Heritage Site, interpret and understand that what Julian Huxley is telling you is that in the future that will be ours. You won't go into the future. That's what it means. We will control the arts. We will control the culture globally. We will control city planning globally. And he says that's the focus of UNESCO. Now, the other stuff, he says nutrition, agriculture, medicine, health, the other entities at the UN, if the UN works, if it succeeds, he says they'll control all that. What we're going to control under UNESCO is the arts. And the arts are crucial because the arts are the means by which, just like Hollywood, the means by which we initiate the masses into the cult of the dum-dum, the Babel cult of the dum-dum, to kill you all. How? Through FEMA camps? No. Through you accepting the culture of death. Through you accepting euthanasia and abortion and the toxic food and not being smart enough to figure out that it's a plan. How are we going to do it? Public schools. Public schools will be all linked to the UN, and they're all going to teach this degeneracy, and now they all teach this degeneracy directly from the UN. Civilization has a dysgenic effect. Civilize everyone. Do you see his thought process? Do you see the logical flow here? Since civilization, and by that he means this stuff, has a degenerative effect, a dysgenic effect, then we need to civilize everyone. That's the purpose of UNESCO, to bring culture and civilization to everyone. What does that actually mean? Oh, it means vaccines. It means abortions. That's what it means. And total degeneracy. In this system, UNESCO will set universal education standards. Genetics will determine from birth what babies will study, and your degree will be determined from birth. From birth. That's why his brother wrote Brave New World. Now, you say, the idiots who have told me over the years, Brave New World was an expose because he's a good guy. Here's his brother saying that it's not an expose. It's the plan. Brave New World is this, right here. Too many gifted kids are wasted, and so they need to be brought into this plan. Public relations is crucial because it's going to be the propaganda arm of UNESCO. Because the scientific method is the only reliable source of information, the root religion here is going to be scientism. He literally teaches a dogma of scientism. And what is the dogma of scientism? It is that everything is relative. There's no more truths. And he's literally too stupid to figure out, too blinded to realize that that's a dogma that claims to be a universal truth. It's really that low IQ. Who are key guys? Freud and Jung. Freud and Jung. He thinks Freud and Jung are science. Now, what about the occult? Is that super? No. The occult is good, he says, actually. We should encourage indigenous tribal principles. Encourage parapsychology and precognition. Why does he say that? Mysticism? Because he wants to have a global New Age cult. That's why. And all the other idiot pagan cults can all merge perfectly into this. That's fine. You can have your pagan cult where you imbibe the energies of Lucifer or whatever you think you're getting. You can have all that. Just merge with this cult. Babel. He says, I'm all for mystical experiences. He says, but regardless, all that stuff doesn't matter. This is page 37. He says, the main thing that matters the most is to ensure that eugenics is taught and known as dogma. Now, does he mean that the Anglo-Saxon British elite are the people that need to go into the future? Is he a racialist eugenicist in the sense that he wants to preserve the Teutonic Knights? Does he want to preserve some? No. He wants the top few percentile of every people group, because that's scientific, right? He actually says, we don't need to eradicate whole people groups. People groups should be studied on the basis of science. Right? We want to know what has been, what has come to be, what's existed. If a species has died out, he's basically saying, in the past, an animal species, that was a travesty for science. We can't study that species. So we want all the species to survive. Why? Because of science. That's why. We want to study black people. We want to study Asians. We want to study all these people. So we want to have the highest quality people. Who's that? The highest IQs. IQ worship. Now, he does say maybe some other people could make the cut if you've got some gifts, talents. But now, here's the big flaw in all this. Who's going to decide who lives and dies? Oh, they will. There's going to be a global committee, death panels, etc., and they'll decide who makes the cut. This is a dystopia. This is a complete nightmare dystopia. This is beyond Nazi Germany. This is beyond all that stuff that everybody talks about. This is the next level beyond all that. He says the sciences don't have values, so we got to figure out a way to come up with values for science. But we don't really know what that is because everything's evolving. So he says, why don't we just try to return to some kind of intuitive thing like shamanistic primitivist religions? What? You mean the top elite demonic guy is saying return to your primitive, archaic, pagan, revivalist tribes and cults? Yes. Why? Because that's intimately connected to MK Ultra, which he's a part of. He and his bro are in the UK branch of MK Ultra. It's the same program. We need LSD and shamans, man. We need to smoke some more Joe Rogan, bro. And then he says we'll come up with a new humanity. Not just a new humanity, but a humanities. When we create a new, in the sense of the liberal arts, the humanities, he says when we create a new body of canon of literature, canon of not the canon of Western literature of civilization, but the canon of a global literature, global humanities, that will be the initiatory indoctrination for you into this cult. He says then we can start to move humanity into transhumanism. And literally create, in his mind, a new humanity, right? The quote at the beginning of the talk. He says, and how do we do that? Well, one thing that we do is we don't just study ancient civilizations that the West studies, like the Greeks and the Romans and the Church Fathers, because that's too much logic and reasoning. You got to balance this out with a lot of Far Eastern gobbledygook, like that. Everything is nonsense, right? This kind of stuff. He says, so import Far Eastern beetles. Import beetles and Far Eastern Hindu crap. And what did 2 days ago, what did our pagan guy who thinks he's got it figured out? That pagan guy? He's just a tool of this guy, and he doesn't even know it. This guy in the 1940s said, the archaic revival, primitivism, the return to tribalism, return to animism, indigenous traditions. It's all part of this plan. You're not reacting. You're reacting on the basis of emotion to actual problems and being led into a dumb cult that they know good and well what it is. You think the system is, you think they're not aware of the rise of your neo-pagan cult? He's saying in the 1940s it's going to come. And you're not one of the elite because you are in some dumb pagan cult. You're one of the people he wants to die because he wants everybody to die. These people are complete psychopaths. Don't you get that? Psychopaths lie. Have you figured that out? Like, they don't tell you the truth. When they write a book, it's not to help you out. They lie. Evolution of morals, he says, is a good thing because if we inculcate enough through public education of the idea of everything evolving, he says we'll have people indoctrinated into relativism. This is what he says on page 45. And he says once they've adopted relativism and once we've broken down their language, literally, he says then they're perfect tools to mold them as the giant silly putty group of people into the global blob. What do we need to run this whole system? Technocracy. Giant AI technocracy is the only way that we can have enough eyes and bureaucracy controlling all this. Otherwise, it's not going to work because the world's too big, too many people, we got too much junk. So he says what we need to do, point out, he says, ugly cities, ugly areas. This gives people the impression that which are real problems, right? And those real problems, problem, reaction, solution, he says, then we can come along and say, oh, let us UN come in and take over your area and we'll spruce it up and we'll make it a World Heritage Site because it'll be for us and our descendants, and we will toxify your culture and you and your descendants can all die out. That's what he says. Man's problem is education, he says. No, it's not. Man's problem is sin. Moral flaw, not an epistemic flaw. He says we need to create a global arts culture and global cultural relativism. Then, when everybody's been initiated into the retard religion of cultural relativism, they are putty in our hands. And this was a key point here. Let me see what my note was on page 53. No scientific... Oh. So, by the way, so here's the irony here. Everything he's saying is the way to preserve high culture and the best of cultures and art. But he says cultural relativism is true. So how do you know what the best and the highest and the elite cultures and artworks are? You don't. Right? So basic bitch level contradiction. So there's no scientific, atheistic, or humanistic basis to judge cultures as to whether they're high or low. However, this whole book is about the preservation of high culture on an atheistic basis, supposedly. What are we going to do? We're going to meld everybody into one. Once again, he says. And he says that you and your artwork, if you're an artist, what you got to understand going into the future is that we're going to have artists, but your artwork is not yours. Your artwork is there to serve the globe. You're a world citizen, and that means your artwork, it's not for you. It's not out of your head. It's in service to humanity. And your artwork will serve humanity. In other words, your artwork is ours. We, the elite, in our minds, how are we the elite? Well, we say we're the elite. Your artwork is ours. What other tools could we use? Libraries and universities throughout the world will be tools of the New World Order. Shocker. Libraries and universities and museums. Libraries, museums, universities will be the tools of UNESCO for propagating a bunch of nonsense. And yeah, he says a lot of it is nonsense. For example, we're going to have to give everybody the ruse of democracy because we're going to kill them all through soft kill. We did whole talks, me and John and Chris, old shows about museums being propaganda. Museums aren't there to preserve some dusty, fake-ass looking Paleolithic man. That's not real. Museums are there to indoctrinate you. They're propaganda, dummy. And there have been whole academic treatises written on the fact that museums are propaganda. They're not there to educate you. Stop being naive. They are part of the control of arts. And this book is saying that globally, the arts, museums, libraries must be integrated into arms of control, and they will have to censor and remove texts, alter texts. This is why you want to own actual physical books, because even ever since the Dr. Day talks, Dr. Day says we are going to literally go out. He's saying what the other doctors, the doctor giving the talks is relaying Dr. Day's talk, and he says we're actually going to go and pull books from libraries. You're not going to be reading certain books. Wonder why the church fathers are so hard to. I mean, there's Amazon, right? But before Amazon came along, do you know how hard it was to get a hold of like church fathers? Where you had to find like a Christian catalog, and it was like $600, $800 to buy the writings of the church fathers back in the 90s when I first got the set. I remember the church fathers set was $1,000. I thought, how am I ever going to buy the church fathers set? And then magically one day it went down to $350, and I took my Christmas money and I bought the church fathers set back in, I don't know, 1999 or 2000, somewhere in there. Maybe 2001. But he's literally saying the same thing that Dr. Day says. If you haven't heard the Dr. Day talks, go listen to them. They're must. The Day tapes, the Dr. Day tapes. There's 3 parts to it. He says they're going to pull everything from libraries. And when we go into the future, when books, by the way, have you noticed that bookstores are going away? When the bookstores go away, they're going to go away because books are going to be for the elite, not for you. You're going to have this nonsense Kindle crap, and it's all going to be edited, and you won't be able to buy the books. They're already calling for the banning of TV shows from 20 years ago. Do you think they're going to allow books from 100 years ago? Of course not. And he says that. Now, there will be books, but they're going to be in libraries for these people because in their mind, they appreciate it. You don't. That's why you want to have books. Somebody was asking me the other day, why do you have so many books? Fahrenheit 451, bro. Amazingly, on page 60, shocker, he quotes Lenin. V.I. Lenin is a great hero of this Luciferian order. So big surprise there, right? And he says we need to utilize the methods of Lenin for global propaganda. He says one overlooked tool is documentaries. Yeah. What's Alan Watt always saying? Documentaries. Don't you know? The big boys. The big boys use documentaries. Of course they do. He says right here they do. Now, I'm not saying all documentaries are fake or they're not all propaganda, but he's saying that all of these means are going to be used to promote this nonsense. He says if we can ever get to the point where everybody has a minimum basic provided income, physical welfare, he says, then we've got it. Because if you don't go along, they'll shut your credits off. That's what he says. Now, I mean, he doesn't say the credits part. That's from Bertrand Russell. But his BFF, his butt buddy's Bertrand Russell. And that's what he says. And that's what he's talking about here. So universal basic income, the social credits, blah, blah, blah. He says all of this is just to merge everything into a giant blob, which is the Perennial Philosophy, the book by Aldous Huxley. And he says, what's the real, can you guess who's the real enemy? Can you guess who's standing in the way to this? It's Christianity and its dogmas. Big shocker. Big shocker. Religious dogma, Christian dogma, is the stumbling block to this great Babel that they're going to build because it believes in absolute morals and absolute ethics and absolute metaphysical principles. But he says that's not evolutionary. We've evolved past that, and it's not practical. He says we need the reconciliation of all opposites. That's Crowleyism, and that's alchemy. So that's the first half of the talk. Since that's a short essay, what we're going to do is part 2 is going to be an investigation into this more in-depth book on living in a revolution. What revolution is he talking about? The French Revolution? No. He's talking about living through the final revolution, the rise of the transhumanist technocracy. The proof of everything that we're going through. Completely satanic plan. Openly so. He even says it's an alchemical process. Reconciliation of all opposites into a giant blob that the elite can manipulate. Babel. The reinstitution of Babel. So on living in a revolution is what we'll do. Now this is a good sized book, so what we may do is split this up into 2 talks. So I might do the first half of this book for the subscribers, which will be part 2 of this talk that we're doing right now. And then I'll introduce a new talk split into 2 on the second half of the book. So, but obviously this essay was only 60 pages in this book. So we want to have material for the subscribers, and that'll be the book. The book on living in a revolution. So, other books, people are talking about the first global revolution. Yeah, that's by the Club of Rome, and that's about the whole green scam. In which book they say we need to invent a thing, climate change and pollution is what they say. We need to invent a thing, pollution, and that's going to be the unifying basis. He completely says that. It's all the same people. The same people at the Club of Rome making that stuff up. It's these people, right? All right, let's read some super chats because I've had a long day. $10. No one else, nobody. Thank you, Nepco. You appreciate the fact that nobody else is really diving into book by 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 book from the top of the pyramid. Grace Asher, $5. You think the Tower of Babel story is God's word? Yeah, of course. That's what I'm saying. They want to build Babel. They want to bring back the Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babel is the insignia of the EU. It's their symbol. I believe it's anti-globalism scripture with reason behind it. It's the anti-globalism scripture. I'm not sure. I mean, Pentecost is intended to be the reversal of Babel. So the real unity that we're all seeking is what's in the church. Gabriel R., $5. Best channel on YouTube. Thank you. Appreciate that, Gabriel. Honored that you would listen and support. Perrin Lance, $10. 100% support the Globalism book series. Consider reading Aberration in the Heartland of the Real, The Secret Life of Timothy McVeigh. Wendy Painting, it blew my mind. Yeah, I mean, I imagine that probably has the same type of stuff that's in Corbett's documentary, by the way, if you want a good analysis of like false flag, black op type stuff. Watch Corbett's video that's had like 1 million views on Timothy McVeigh and black ops. But I haven't read Wendy Painting's book, but it's probably saying the same thing. HSAP, $5. Love your stuff, Jay. Also, if you're tired of shill tunes, follow my band at Pilgrim Star Band on Instagram. Shill tunes. iTunes? Shill tunes? Okay, we'll check out that on Instagram at Pilgrim Star Band. New album coming soon this summer. Shameless plug. Okay, appreciate that. No problem with music plugs here. John J., $20. Thank you, John. Appreciate your work. Get yourself on an Owen Benjamin stream. It's not up to me who has me on what stream. You two would be spectacular together. Yeah. I mean, he knows I exist. It's up to him. Rob James, $10. Go buy yourself a beer. I don't drink beer, but thank you. I quit drinking many years ago. Haven't had a drop of alcohol in many years. I have absolutely no desire for alcohol. Can't stand it. I had enough alcohol in my 20s. Pretty much messed up my gut. So I'm still fixing my gut from years of alcohol. So no, won't be getting a beer. But thank you for the $10, Rob James. Appreciate it. Nick Jones, $10. Can't hang out very late. I'll watch the rest tomorrow. Before leaving, however, I want to express my support and gratitude. Thanks always. Thank you, Nick. Much appreciation for that $10. I know you've been here for a pretty good spate for a long haul. I remember the name. I remember the super chats, and they're very much appreciated. Exodus 580, $20. Word up. What should Orthodox churches in the States do to have an impact on their local government politically against liberalism and globalism? I don't think they need to even worry about local government, because they need to fix their own problems in their own house before they try to worry about the problems out there. And so Orthodoxy has a multitude of problems in America in its own house. So they need to worry about that. They need to figure out if they even believe the Bible before they try to go off and fix the government. So that's at the end of the problem list. That's not at the top of the problem list. But I thank you for that $20, and I thank you for your thoughtfulness there. But there's no point in fighting globalism and liberalism when we don't even believe that the Bible records the actual events in history. I mean, it's just, what's the point of this religion at all? It's just a social club. It's a tool for the government, right? They need to figure that out first before trying to get into this other political nonsense. And by the way, politics is a waste of time. Evan Schultz, $30. I look forward to your discourse on Genesis, creation, early man. Might you consider critiquing orthodoxy? I did a talk on Orthodoxy and Religion of the Future. There's a 2-part talk. So I wouldn't critique it. I think it's a great book. But thank you for that. Much appreciated, Evan, longtime supporter. And yes, there will be a series of lectures on Genesis, creation, and early man. But just type in Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future, Jay Dyer, and you'll get, it's had like 20,000 views. So definitely should check that out if you haven't heard that. Marco Kalabik, $7.50. Are the prophecies of Russian saints regarding the end times authentic? I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, I've read some of these. I don't know what specifically the prophecy of Saint Seraphim of Sarov's end times prophecy is. I think that we should look at them with an open mind. St. John of Kronstadt's vision does seem to predict a lot of things in the 20th century, like clown masses and all this kind of nonsense. So, we talked about that. in the nihilism talk, but I'm not familiar with the specific vision of Saint Seraphim of Seraph. So I think that we can be open to that, but again, those are private revelations, you could say, or beliefs. They're certainly not on the same level as revealed dogma. In fact, even in the liturgy of what day was it when we had that liturgy? Was it the Sunday of Orthodoxy? I think the Sunday of Orthodoxy liturgy reads even that we accept the writings of the Holy Fathers, the Church Fathers, when they are in accord with divine revelation. So even the councils, even any of it, Origen, right? Because somebody said, well, Origen was a church father. Yeah, but we accept these people when they're in accord with divine revelation. So for us, there's not a dialectic. We're not Protestants when we say that, because if the church fathers teach something true and it's in accord with divine revelation, that's not in contrast. It's in perfect harmony. Guy Incognito, $5. Any recommendations for reading on soldiers venerated by the church? Honestly, no, I don't know a specific thing on that. I mean, Metropolitan Philaret would bless the army and all that. But I mean, you read about the Serbian kings, right? I mean, like the history of Serbia. They have kings that were saints. Emeridox people, normie docs, they read it in the liturgy. We praise the Orthodox kings and queens and saints, and then they turn around and think that all these enlightenment principles are what God wants. I mean, this is total doublethink. All right, thank you guys. I'm getting kind of tired. 1 hour, that's not bad. Really appreciate your support. I think it was a good chat. But yeah, I'm kind of winding down now. So God bless you all, and stay tuned. It may be a couple days before we get part 1. Well, the second half of this will be part 1 of On Living in a Revolution. Give me a few days to put that up. So I've been doing a lot of stuff lately. Have a good night. God bless.